Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Club Junkie Podcast. Hopefully, you're having a great week. We are getting really close to Christmas. It is crazy how fast this year's gone by, as usual. I think I say that every week, and I think the older I get, the just crazier it feels how fast it goes by. So, hopefully, you're having a good week. Hopefully, you're getting all your shopping done. Before we get into today's episode, I'm going to let you know this episode is brought to you by Titleist and the Pro V1 golf balls. How did you play last time out? Whether you shot an all-time low or if it's a tough day on the course, you always want to do better the next time you tee it up. And outperforming yesterday starts with trusting your golf ball. Titleist Pro V1, Pro V1X, and Pro V1X Left Dash are the most technologically advanced in the game and the ultimate golf ball performance choice. They all deliver exceptionally long distance, consistent flight, and unrivaled control. Pro V1 delivers very low long game spin, mid-flight trajectory, maximum short game spin, and a soft feel. Pro V1 is a great fit for most players and where you might start in your golf ball fitting process. Compared to Pro V1X has a higher flight and a firmer feel, where Pro V1X Left Dash is for players looking for flight similar to Pro V1X, but with a lower full swing spin and a firmer feel. I'm a Pro V1X guy, you guys know. I love the higher ball flight, the added spin. But outperform your best. Learn more about Pro V1, Pro V1X, and Pro V1X Left Dash at Titleist.com. So, yeah, hopefully you're having a good one. Yeah, crazy. Hopefully you got your shopping done. I'm hoping I have all mine done. Fingers are crossed. I didn't have to do much. My wife is amazing. She does most of it. But I had to do a little bit of it on my own. So hopefully I'm done. But got a cool show for you today. I've got Erik Boysen from Graphite Design on, and we get talk about some of the new shafts that have been out, talk about some of the stuff on tour, some old shafts at the end, just all that. But it's a pretty fun show. He's a really cool guy. He kind of works out on tour, but also works with Graphite Design and Pro's Choice Golf Shafts, who's the distributor. He kind of explains it all. But really fun to have Erik on. He's a guy that I actually met on a tour truck years ago, was when I first met him in person from just emails. But super nice guy, tons of knowledge about golf shafts, fits some of the best players in the world, or at least works with them with shafts. So a really fun conversation with Erik. So hopefully you enjoy that, and enjoy the conversation. We'll have a show next week. I'll probably record it. I don't know when it's going to come out. It's going to be like right around like kind of Christmas there, but we will have a show for next week. I've got a few things to mess with. Maybe some new putters from Lab. I don't know. We'll see. But hopefully enjoy the interview, and we'll talk next week. All right. We are here. A special guest. We don't have a lot of guests on Club Junkies, but I do like having guests that are kind of junkies. And we definitely have one here. Erik Boysen from Graphite Design / Pro's Choice. I never kind of know which name to put with you, because you guys are, in a way, synonymous, but in a way not. So it's a little bit of both. I know if you've ever Googled Graphite Design shafts, you're probably going to Pro's Choice, and that's where you guys have all the specs, everything. Yeah. But Erik, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you taking some time.
I'm excited to talk.
Yeah. So, give us, before we jump into some shafts, some nerdy stuff, you kind of live an exciting life when you look in the world of golf. I know a lot of people who don't know you would be kind of jealous of what you do. I mean, when I first met you, it was on a tour truck at an event years ago. But, give us a little history, like kind of how did you get in the golf business, and kind of what do you do now?
Yeah. Almost 23 years ago, started at Never Compromise Putters in the sales department. With Vikosh and Brian Pond and Brad Adams, and slinging putters for those guys, and getting guys like Ernie Els to win major championships, and then did that for a while, then transitioned to Sonartec Golf. Japanese, Fairway Woods Hybrids, had that huge win with Todd Hamilton, which is unbelievable. Time and sports. I think it sort of put the hybrid on the map, I would say, at that sort of a unique hybrid driving iron. Yeah. And then transitioned into Graphite Design. Got into Graphite Design and took over the tour department. Been doing this now for almost 20 years with Graphite Design, traveling the world, working with the best players on the PGA Tour. So when you mentioned Pro's Choice and Graphite Design, we are their largest distributorship in the world. We handle everything outside of Japan for them. So we're sort of an arm of their company. So I oversee all tours in the world except the Japan tour. So we make sure product is shipped globally. We're a small company, only 14 of us. We work together. We work together every day, and it's fun. Like I said, I'm very blessed to work with the best players in the world and travel and see some of the coolest things and great OEMs and friendships over the years. So it's been an
Yeah.
exciting ride.
Definitely. It's like I said, I mean, it's one of those things where I've been fortunate enough to see a little bit of that life through, we have our guys Greg and Andrew and
Yeah.
all that on tour, and I know a few, met a few people through there, and thankfully met you as well, and we keep in touch a lot. And yeah, it's one of those things when you're kind of out there, we kind of jokingly call it like the circus with
Yes.
Greg and with Greg and Andrew, but it's definitely a small world, and everybody is kind of friends and helps out, and it's like
Yeah.
it's amazing how good all the people are out there. Like, you might think, like, just because you're with Graphite Design, that you hate the guys from Mitsubishi or Fujikura or whoever, and it's like all you guys work with the same people. Everybody kind of does their thing, and it's amazing to see kind of how friendly and how cooperative everyone is, regardless of who they work for, and the brands and all that. It really is kind of special to see out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you said, I could work with a Fujikura guy 1 minute or a Mitsubishi guy, but we're also working with the OEMs at the time. So we're friends. In some cases, we see these individuals. I would say there's 80 of us that travel, let's say weekly. That's plus or minus. Sometimes we see these people more than we see our families, and they're an extended part of our family. So we have to get along. We have our moments. We probably bicker and get into some heated discussions, but we're cordial. It's professional. We're all trying to achieve the same thing, get these players optimal performance, the best equipment in the world, and it's exciting, but also stressful because it's our jobs, and being type A competitive. When a guy switches and changes into a competitor shaft, it definitely, you lose a little sleep here and there, especially when it's an elite player. But any player I get pretty upset with, and then I try to reach out to them and figure out what we can do to get them back. So,
Yeah.
it's an interesting environment, but fun, very fun.
I bet. And I bet it's kind of interesting too, because there's probably very kind of like in regular, amateur golf with your buddies, you've got people like myself who, love trying everything. You're changing a lot of clubs, changing shafts, doing a lot of things. And then there's probably players out there that, I mean, they're not going to change until they really, really need to, or something really shows performance. And is it interesting kind of balancing that of that player who, oh, you've got something new, I definitely want to try it. And you're going, well,
Yeah.
it may not fit your swing, whatever, but they still want to try it. And then the person going, man, we've got this new piece, and it could probably really fit that pretty well, but
Right.
they're kind of stuck in their ways of like, hey, this is working for me, I'm not moving. Is it interesting kind of juggling between different players like that, the different personalities?
Yeah, being out there as long as I have, the guys that will try on a win, no problem, from a testing point, or just they want the latest and greatest. And then there's guys that are very methodical and know details. And those are the guys you build something for and say, hey, take this home. Because they take it to their home course and they know how far they hit it, the bunkers they have to clear, the shots they need to hit. And there's that circle of guys that want to take it home and try it. And then there's the guy on the range that will give it a whack and go, hey, oh, wow, I like this. And we do some fine tuning. And then usually Tuesday, they take it out on the course. And if they like it, they'll usually come to you and say, hey, can we work on something here, this and that? And then when you see it in the bag during a Pro-Am on a Wednesday, it's a pretty good sign that something's going right. And I don't usually try to corner the player because they got a lot going on. I call it their office. When they're on the tees, they're in their office and they're working hard. I'll go up to a caddy who's maybe grabbing some more range balls and saying, how's that hybrid working, or 3-wood, or that driver? And the caddy knows that's a huge resource on the PGA Tour. They see every shot their player hits or their boss. So they know exactly what they're looking for, or tendencies. Oh, he's always missing it right or left, or it's a high spinner, or something like that. So caddy's a great resource to check in with to see how that club is working. So, the caddy carries a lot of information, knows a lot.
When you look out on tour right now, I mean, I know when VF first hit, it seemed like it kind of caught fire. We saw a lot of guys switch into it.
Yeah.
As you kind of look back over 2024 and kind of that season, is even though we've kind of had this wraparound thing, golf never really ends. But when you look at kind of 2024 and kind of some of the trends with the Graphite Design shafts, I know, there was a time when, every player out there, it seemed, had a DI. and you just saw orange and white shafts everywhere. Now you kind of see a little bit more of a mix. You'll see DIs, but then all of a sudden, you'll see VF. You see a little bit more mix, I believe, now with the Graphite design line. Have you looked and kind of seen any trends from, say, last year that you can say, this type of shaft or this kind of area of your lineup kind of, is utilized more maybe this year as opposed to other years?
Yeah. It's a good question. Trends are unique. I would say in the beginning of the year, we saw length questionings and going a little bit longer. And then some of the elite players started going lighter. Everyone's looking for ball speed because it's so minimal right now. And when we get 2 or 3 miles an hour of ball speed, that's exciting for a player, and they want to capture that and retain that ball speed. We saw a player recently in a big event in the Bahamas talking about how his ball speed's gone up because of length. These guys are looking for any advantage possible. So I would say some guys are trying to go as light as possible and as long as possible to keep impact center, to see ball speed. And today it's so driven with foresight technology and TrackMan technology where they're looking at ball speed, landing angle, spin, launch. It's very technical, and guys can hit probably an elite player, any PGA Tour player can hit 2 or 3 balls and know right away if that's club, if it's lighter or longer, is going to work. They really tell. They see the ball speed jump, and you could see they're thinking. A caddy will lean over, look at the numbers, and go, "Hey, that's pretty good there. I like the carry." And then we start working on it and fine tuning it. If it's loft, lie angle, overall swing weight of the club, and those are things that we have to consider. But I would say it's still down to players. Some players want to go as light as possible to create ball speed and feel that club through the swing. But our line is I have so many tools, from the VF to the GC to the CQ, the DI hybrid, now a VF hybrid. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm very lucky to have so many resources out on tour. I sort of watch players and see. I think when we were at the Scottish and British Open this year, we brought the VF over there, the new driving iron, or the VF hybrid. And I think from the Scottish to the British Open, I think like 20 went into play because it hits a window. Yeah, it's unbelievable. If I could show you guys the list, which I can't, but to see the players see the launch in the window, I think that's a big word we hear out on tour that a lot of amateurs don't hear is windows. Players want to hit certain windows for different course conditions, a downwind, into the wind, crosswinds. They want to hit windows to achieve the optimal ball flight for maximum carry and distance. So I think I'm very lucky and a lot of the shaft guys are lucky because we all have so many resources out on tour, from heads to shafts to the best club builders in the world to optimize a club for a player's ability or what they're looking for to get that club in the bag.
Yeah. And, you kind of mentioned the hybrid / driving iron shaft. And I think that's become such a big topic again, out there, because we've seen high lofted fairways become super popular again, whether out on tour or in amateur bags. I mean, I put a 7-wood in play a couple of years ago and I absolutely love it. Like, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
But we've also seen kind of a resurgence of the utility iron, driving iron as well. Like, that's one that has kind of caught on that I feel like I didn't really see coming. Like, I didn't see that was going to be a big segment. And it seems like the technology there has gotten so good that you're seeing more and more of those clubs for a variety of reasons in bags. When you look at, because, I mean, you guys do manufacture both, or Graphite Design manufactures iron and hybrid shafts. Kind of what is, when the player's looking to put something in that club, like utility iron to replace an iron, when they're looking for a shaft, is it more of like a window thing? Is it a weight thing? Is it a kind of a combo of both? What is it that kind of drives them to figure out what to go in that iron? And I know it's probably different for every player.
Yeah.
But, it's such a big thing. I think a lot of guys, I get a lot of questions of, what should I put in one of those clubs? Should it be graphite? Should I match my irons if I'm playing steel? Where do people go? And I think there's people still kind of figuring that out right now. But when you look at, these really elite players, is it something more window? Is it weight? Is it feel? Like, what kind of drives them when they make the final decision to say, you know what, DI is the one. I like that better than
Yeah.
VF, or I like it better than IZ, or what, when they make that final choice.
Yeah, and great question. The driving iron to me is two clubs. It's either off the tee, a low
Yep.
rocket that's going to hit the ground and run incredibly far. It's amazing in open conditions or Scottish conditions. I mean,
Yeah.
you take a 2-iron, 3-iron, and they're hitting it 275, 280. Yes, 250 on the ground, but it's 30 yards a roll. So if a guy's looking for a driving iron, they're going to go with a VF or something stiffer profile to keep the ball down, penetrate it, and get it on the ground and run. If a guy is using a long iron to hit second shot par threes, or par fives, or long par threes, they're probably going to go with a DIY, higher launch. They can get it to hit the green and stay. Where the VF may come in a little hot and get to the back of the green or get over the green. It's trying to find what the club wants. We worked with one player at the Open. He loved the flight of the VF in the wind, the hybrid. But then he's like, God, I took it out, and I couldn't hold any of the par threes when you get in windy conditions. I said, well, same club, let's just put a DI in it. And then all of a sudden he was like, oh, I can move this around in my stance. I can hit it high, mid, or low. This is the club I need for this week. So we have the capabilities. And I think an amateur player, if they're looking for a driving iron in their bag, they need to know what they want to do with it. If it's a club that they're going to use it off a tee, and a second shot club off for a third shot club off a par 5, go with something of the higher launch, a little bit more spin so it can hold the green. If you're looking for a rocket on a narrow par 4, go with something that launches a little bit lower, gets it on the ground, and you can hit fairways, and then you lower your score.
Yeah.
So.
You're right. I mean, because for me, a utility iron, when I do put one in the bag, it kind of replaces a 4-iron. And for me, I'm looking for a little added launch. I'm trying to get that ball up in the air, get a little more carry, and I'm not so concerned about the roll. I mean, I live in Detroit. It's soft here, so
Yeah.
you're not getting those 30 yards of roll like you get at the Open or maybe some southern locations.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to just hit it high, hit it soft, and when I do have to hit it into the green, I have a chance of holding it. And
Exactly.
for me, VF and a utility probably isn't going to suit me very well, where I would, look at something like a DI or an IZ because, it offers that kind of flight.
Yeah. And then, going back to the DI, like, it's amazing. I mean, I've put this club a shaft into thousands of clubs. It's crazy that, I think the thing that the DI just feels so good from a player's performance feedback, but it's a true shaft that high launch, low spin, and optimal windows. I mean, and the 3-wood today is the last club in the bag that you use off a tee and off a deck.
Yep.
So when you need something in a fairway wood to get it off the ground, off the deck, you need something that's going to get the ball up in the air. But then when you put the DI and put it on a tee, you can change your windows with it. So it's a very versatile shaft for any player, from a pro to an amateur, if they're looking for, great performance. I think sometimes people pay. I was working with one player, and he was like, why is this 3-wood tip so much? And I'm like, well, dude, your ball speed's like over 180. But he's like, it only goes straight and low. I need to get it up. And when we start talking, so we're like, well, let's just build a couple. We have that option. Instead of a typical 3-wood's tipped 1.5 inches on tour, we tried 1 inch and then the 1/2 inch, and we ended up with 1 inch. Why? Because it was versatile. He can hit it off the tee, achieve his windows, control ball flight. But then off the deck, he was like, perfect. I can get it off the ground, and I can hit my second shot in a par 5 with it. So finding a 3-wood is, when players say they want to work with 3-woods, it's a little scary because it's one of the toughest clubs.
Yeah.
It's one of the toughest clubs to build. And that's why I think we're seeing, 3-woods that are 2 or 3 generational old in players' bags from manufacturers. Even if they switch a manufacturer, they're still in that 3-wood because it's a magical club for them. They just can't find another club that works.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, a driver, you hit it off the tee. It's like, you may hit draws, hit fades, hit your shots with it, but for the most part, I mean, it's always hit off the tee, and it's kind of that one trick pony in a sense. Where a 3-wood, it is also, I think, for some players, a confidence thing. When they have that tight hole where the pressure's on, you got to hit the fairway, whatever. They kind of go to the 3-wood as that trusty, I can do this and get it down there far enough, still hit the fairway and all that. And when you find it and have the confidence in a club, it's very difficult to move on to a new one.
Oh, it is.
You mentioned DI. I do have to ask, because I think it's one of the, it's got to be one of the longest running shafts out there that's, played on tour. I mean, when you look at DI and look back to when it was first launched, I mean, you look at how long that shaft has been in play by
Yeah.
so many elite players, amateur players, everything. I mean, the whole gamut from,
Yeah.
fitting, newer players to tour wins. Are you surprised to see that shaft still gets as much play as it gets? I mean, do you think it would have been kind of phased out by now or anything like that? I mean, it's still going extremely strong after all
It's
these years. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'll be honest. The first time I saw it in the office in the U.S., I was like, orange, like orange, and everyone was walking around like scratching their heads, and I'm like, I really orange, and and then you start feeling the performance and the characteristics, and it was so great. And yes, I'm so surprised today that it's still going as strong as it does. I mean, we've updated the Tour AD logo. We've added black and white due to
Yep.
player demand. Yes, I'm surprised that it's like I said, I've built thousands of clubs with DI in it. I have them in my bag. I feel bad at times when a player asks me, "So what's a good fairway wood shaft?" And I'm like, "Let's
DI.
try it, DI." And they look at you and they're like, and then they hit it and they're like, "Wow, this is really good." And you'll be surprised though. There's many elite players that haven't hit it. I mean, some of
Really?
these guys go down rabbit holes and they just don't change manufacturers. And maybe they go at a local club fitting event or something. I'll have a player go to a local, I don't know, club fitter, and he's hitting it, and the guy's like, "Hey, have you tried this DI?" And they hit it, and they come up to me and they're like, "Where have you been?" I'm like, "Well, where have you been?" It's like,
Yeah.
I'm here every week, so are you. You could try it anytime. But yes, Brian, it's unbelievable. It's the flagship of graphite design. I mean, it's hard legally. I can't mention players, but some of the greatest players in the world have used it, and it's just continues to go on and on and on, and it's fun. It's really
Yeah.
cool to say that I was a part of it. I remember bringing it to Titleist the very first time, the TPI, and telling these guys that it was a high launch, low spin shaft, and
Like what?
the fitters were like, "Yeah, right, sure it is." And then like a week later, like, "Wow, this thing does really launch high, but it has no spin on it." And I'm like, "I know, it's pretty cool, right?" And they were like, "Wow, this is really good." And it caught on wildfire from there.
Yeah.
I can remember the meeting in it almost like a closet sized room, meeting with the Titleist guys and handing out this orange shaft, and they were like, "Me, orange? Okay,
Yeah. What?
orange?" And here we are today, still talking about it. So cool, so
Well, I mean,
exciting.
I remember I had it in, I think it was, geez, it might have been an X Hot. I mean, back in the day, I mean,
Oh yeah,
2013, 14, whatever, I had one there. And I remember going to a course and I was a single. I went up, walked up, got paired up with three other guys. And, I think we were on the third or fourth hole. And the guy goes, "How do you like that Tiger Woods shaft?"
yeah,
And at first I was like, "Tiger Wood." And it was I think it was right when he was playing the DI.
yeah,
And I was like, oh yeah. And like, that was how that person looked at it, because at the time, I think it was at that time,
yeah.
Tiger was playing it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that was the question I got. How's the Tiger shaft? Like, he had no idea what the name is, what the brand was, anything. He
No,
just knew from watching on TV tournaments that Tiger played this shaft. And
yeah,
I was like, yeah, well, I mean, I kind of started playing it before Tiger a little bit, but okay.
yeah.
But you're,
He definitely helped move the needle. I remember being at Augusta for the first time, and seeing him on a tee box with it, and he hit his perfect Tiger drive with his follow through, and I still get goose pimples thinking about it. I mean, that was a huge point to go. One of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever, using that product. It's pretty
yeah.
cool. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and then I don't think anybody has more DIs than Hideki, because I know Greg gets photos in his bag every week, and he's had some iconic shots of a handful of DIs laying around the
Yes.
bag. We know, some with head, some without, and he's
Yes,
the
he's a
ultimate
very
tester.
methodical player. He's an unbelievably kind individual, and
Yep.
he's a field player, and he knows what he wants. And we're working on feel weekly. When an individual, and these elite players hit so many balls, he's a little different. There's some characteristic issues. Sometimes he's looking for different trimming, and we try different, an inch or a half inch or 3/4 in drivers, and he is changing a little bit from some weight underneath the grip to no weight underneath the grip. There is a science to it. Yes, it's maddening, but it's pretty cool because he has results. I mean, he's won majors, and it's impressive to be around to see him, his thought process and feel. And I've given him shafts, prototypes, and his way to articulate about performance is it's pretty cool. It's pretty
Yeah. I,
it's
Yeah, you got to believe it is. I mean, if you're testing that many, trying out that many different things, and like you said, different tippings, whatever, just minute changes that a lot of us would probably never know if you just, handed us a shaft and did something to it and said, what do you think?
yeah.
There's probably a lot of that we would never notice, but players, of his caliber who can, decipher that and feel the difference, notice the difference, it's got to be pretty interesting. Because yeah, I mean, I think if you handed us 3 shafts that were all tipped a little bit different amounts, it probably is going to be hard unless it's crazy to
Right.
tell, a 1/4 inch here or even a 1/2 inch probably would be probably pretty difficult.
It's absolutely the feel. It's just like that's what to know their performance and the feel and what they're looking for. It's amazing what these guys. Some guys don't have elite feedback, but some have feedback that's like, really, how did you feel that? Like they know, and that's why when we new prototypes that we go to those guys and try to get their feedback, because some can really explain it. Some need a launch monitor to explain it, but yeah, they're on a whole different level. It's a pretty amazing to be around.
Yep. So we talked about DI, the legend.
Yeah.
2010 was when it came out, but recently we've seen a lot of we've got a few new shafts that came out as well.
Yeah.
The one that's kind of the oldest, and it doesn't even feel that old, but the VF. I know that hit the tour, and it seemed like boom, we saw a bunch of names switch over. We mentioned Tiger Woods before,
Yeah.
and he made a quick switch, but when you look at VF. For a lot of players, I think they're pretty excited because Graphite Design historically hasn't done a lot of lower launching, lower spinning shafts. It
Yeah.
seems like, at least when you look at the line, of recent. Yeah, so I think a lot of people are pretty excited to see something in that kind of category.
Yeah.
But kind of give us a little, a little talk about VF. Kind of where did it come from, and kind of what players it for? What's kind of the magic sauce of it?
Yeah, we're a Japan-based company, and a lot of our R&D starts in Japan on the JGTO. So we're talking individuals that may be a little bit smaller in stature. Their swing speed is, the professional 112, 114, 116. But when you come into the PGA Tour and guys are cruising at 120 plus, we just deal with a different animal here. And our tour team, we have about 6 or 7 guys in Japan that I work with, and they come over 2 or 3 times a year, and they see these younger athletes, just they are shocked at times because they don't see that on the Japan tour. And we had to create a shaft that was a low launching, mid to low launching, low spinning shaft for today's player. And we're very methodical in what we do. And we found this VF part to have the feel and the performance for today's players. And it's one player, oh, well, let's try the TX and the VF. And I was like, wow, this thing is, it's going to be stiff. Our TX shafts are about 10 cycles more than our X. And they're used to Graphite Design being a little bit softer, a little bit more feel. They hit TX and they look back at you going, okay, this is a big boy shaft. So it's just a shaft because the tip flex is so much stiffer, but we still have the Graphite Design feel in it. And it's iconic for us to have feel in our shafts. We want feel. We want the player to know where the ball is on the club face and how the shaft loads. We never create anything that's super stiff, boardy. If you look at EI curves or the way that you measure how shaft bends, all our shafts are very consistent or smooth in the bend profile. We don't have any hard steps in them.
Yeah.
And we wanted to keep that in the VF, and it worked. We had some key tour reps try the product earlier in the process, and they loved it, and then they were able to put it in some of the better players' hands, and it sort of took off last year. It's been exciting, been fun.
Yeah.
It's trying to catch up with DI, but still DI just rocks and rolls. But VF is gaining momentum now that we added the VF hybrid. It's a great piece for us.
Yeah, and like I said, like you said, I mean, having something that those maybe players who are used to playing something very boardy from another manufacturer because they wanted some launch and spin control to now have an option that, you guys have that, for me, it was interesting when I hit VF, the launch wasn't crazy low. But I was amazed at how low it spun. It right now, I mean, it was probably, when I look back on 2024 and a lot of the shafts I hit, it still stands out as probably one of the lower spinning shafts for me. In a variety of heads. I probably tried it in probably 4 or 5 different heads over there, and it was amazing. Consistently, it just had a really low spin number for me all the time. And like you said, the nice thing is he still had some feel to it. Even with me, I'm not a guy who swings it super hard, super fast. Still has a little bit of feel, and it's still a really playable shaft.
Yeah. I think we're seeing that, like I said, these younger athletes, golfers are swinging it so hard and so fast. And a lot of them have grown up without feel. But I think feel is becoming a part of the game. There's more and more players out there with good feel around the greens, and they want to transition that feel into their longer clubs. So we're getting that request, and it just fits a niche for us. It's who we are. We like the iconic colors, the black and the red stand out. It's a very strong piece for us. So, and it comes, we're seeing it everywhere. So it's enjoyable, and the manufacturers like it from a performance side too.
And I got to think that fitters like, I mean, not only VF, but I mean, pretty much the whole brand. If you look at the whole lineup of Graphite Design shafts, if you're a fitter, you can go in there and you guys make everything from basically a 40 series, shaft all the way up to like an 8 for most. There might be some of the lighter weight pieces that, only stop maybe at 7, but you make basically from 80, maybe even some 90s. I think there might be 1 or 2 and still a 90 that are retail. But I mean, the weight range that you can get almost every Graphite Design shaft is I don't think anybody even comes close to see that you can get a 40 series gram and an 80 that, I mean, you could, fairway woods, whatever your weight preference. I mean, you're going to be able to dial something in from a fitting aspect to to any golfer.
Yeah. And to say that our 40 and 50 gram shafts, if you could see a raw shaft to see how thin those walls are.
Yeah.
And these manufacturers do have durability tests to make sure our shafts at 40 and 50 grams are durable for tour players or consumer usage. And they work and they perform. And, it's amazing that we had one of the, top 30 players in the world for a while using a 50 gram X on tour, swinging at 120 plus. And this shaft held, and was consistent with the profile. And it's exciting for us, and it shows the world our capabilities as a shaft manufacturer. We make some extremely light parts that work, and that's the quality that Graphite Design is. It's very impressive, because when I see the stuff and I'm like, wow, I'm going to build this, it's paper. I mean, it's seriously, take out a credit card. The wall of a 30 or 40 gram driver shaft is the size of a credit card. Walls.
Yeah. You better be a decent builder too, because you don't want to destroy anything and putting it together. And then so VF, we've seen it on tour. The one that we kind of haven't seen on tour yet, and I think it'll probably be coming, or at least a little more. I know there's a few pieces, but the new GC, which has been something that I've really liked in driver. When you guys were nice enough to send me one, been very impressed with it. I'm a mid-launch kind of guy when it comes to driver, usually mid and maybe even slightly higher depending on the head, but. Kind of give us a little history with GC. I know it kind of had a somewhat famous name and a little attached to it when it was first kind of shown off, but I think a really solid shaft, and for a little unique in a sense that little stiffer handle section than most of the other mid-launch shafts in Graphite Design, kind of in that same category at least that I've noticed.
Yeah, and I think what we've done with GC is we have a pretty amazing R&D team. We've created a sort of a material taper inside the handle section, and that material taper creates stability, but we're also trying to create load and ball speed, where that GC shaft is a mid-launching shaft that once again feels good, but you also you're seeing an increase in the midsection to tip section and ball speed. It just loads differently. Torre, which is our material supplier, has given us some new technology, and with our mandrel supply, we created these. They're tiny steps inside the butt section of the shaft to create feel and launch, and we're getting some traction. It's already won twice in Japan. We got some guys. This is sort of the season, November, December, where a lot of the free agents are out in Carlsbad or Dallas or South Florida testing product. So we'll see some new players in GC. It takes some time. We call it seeding. It usually
Yep.
takes 3 to 4 months on tour to get guys to try stuff. We had some success with some players early at the Scottish and British, put it in play in Fairway Woods. The driver's always the tough one. It's the big dog.
Yep.
It's hit a lot, and consistency is so important. So once again, it's building stuff this time of year for players to take back home and try. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback from the OEMs at their test centers and from players. So yeah, hopefully at the Century or at the Sony Open, we'll see a few here and there.
Yeah, no, it's been one of the ones that I wouldn't say shocked at, because when I kind of saw the specs on it, I was like, oh, this could fit, my swing fairly well, and
Yeah.
and it really has. And like you said, I mean, with everything else, Graphite design, I mean, the feel on that shaft, it's extremely smooth. It's got that stable feel, but it still has a little activeness, as it gets towards impact. It kind of feels like it's releasing some energy, and yeah, just a really consistent, shaft, and a great kind of mid-launch profile that you can just kind of swing freely at.
Yeah, and and I know at retail, I think there's a 50 gram X, and I don't know, I get in trouble sometimes. There might be a 50 gram TX. I don't know if that's tour only or retail, but it's pretty impressive. You can create a shaft with that stiffness and to handle, let's say, a 118 to 122, 23 club head speed.
Yep. And at least on the website, 5X only. So
Perfect. Sorry,
might
TX.
might be a tour only part, but hey, but you can get a 7TX. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
there. And then I'll say the shaft that, again, kind of the three new ones. This is the oldest of the three, but this is the one I finally got to hit back, a little while ago, and I was surprised at how much I did like it. For whatever reason, I think a lot of people get scared when you say something's high launch and
Yeah.
it's got some spin, and people go, whoa. But the CQ is way more stable than you'd expect. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, you look at kind of the description, you look at the specs, and you go, oh, it's going to launch high, it's going to have some spin, which a lot of players need. Like, I'm not and hitting that, I was amazed, like how tight that feels, how consistent it is, and how stable that shaft feels for being, a little bit softer tip section, gets the ball in the air pretty easily. But I do have to say, if you're a bigger hitter and you are into, X flex, stuff like that, this is still stable enough to play with, the high swing speed players.
Exactly. And I think we see in today's marketplace where so many of the manufacturers, I would say this is a fairway wood shaft, maybe a senior LPGA driver shaft, but for higher swing speed. CQ is more of a fairway wood shaft. And the reason is it's a little bit softer tip, but the stability. And today, everything is so low spin from all these manufacturers, club heads and balls. Adding a little spin, when I say a little, 200, 300 RPMs, not a bad thing. If you're having a hard time getting the fairway wood off the deck and you need some launch help, CQ fits it. It's, and we've had players on tour play it for a long time, and they just love that it just launches. It's effortless after, and I think what validates a club too, and I probably should have mentioned earlier, is like, what do you do on 14 through 18 or 13 through 18 when you're tired? You can't rotate on the ball. You're blocking everything right. You need a shaft that can work with you. And that's why getting a shaft that loads and helps your impact on the backside of the golf course, on the back nine, will become important to win that little skin or money game for you. So I think there's so many options out there, but CQ's, it performs well. It's a very cool shaft to see in use. And like I said, it may launch a little bit higher. It doesn't have too much spin on it, but gets the feel that some guys enjoy. Feels like there's load or kick at the bottom.
Exactly. It definitely does. You can kind of feel more of that flex happen kind of in the lower end of the shaft, as opposed to like a VF where that tip is very stiff and doesn't have kind of as much of it. But the CQ, like I said, when they handed it to me, I was actually doing my Titleist GT fitting, and we were trying to find a fairway wood combo, and that ended up being the 16.5 degree head that we turned down.
Oh yeah.
And with CQ, in a 70 gram part was really, really good. And like I said, it was the biggest thing was I tend to hook the ball, and it has nothing to do with the club or the shaft or anything. It's all this body. And even for being a higher launch shaft, like, you didn't have to worry about big hooks or draws or anything like that. It was stable enough where the ball just wanted to go straight.
Well, that's where, where softer tipped shaft creates a little bit of lag and stays behind you. Where if you get too stiff tip stiff, and like you, if you're a big drawer, like a VF shaft will close the club head down quicker because it's working with you. Next thing you're hooking it everywhere, where CQ may stay open through impact and alleviate the left side of the golf course. So there are benefits to having a little bit softer shaft, but it's also finding the right loft and spin characteristics to work with that shaft. There's so many variables, but
Yep. And then I know you can't break the down the walls and tell us everything, but is there anything for 2025 that we can look forward to if you're a Graphite Design fan or a shaft? I know you can't give us the details of maybe what it is or the name or all of that, but are we going to see some new stuff in 25 as well?
We are. We're gonna. The tour team will have new parts. We're actually working on graphics right now and stuff like that. But yes, we're always working. I mean, Japan has already got 26 parts done of the tour AD line, and we're working on 27. So
Wow.
yeah, we have to be out there. But we are creating a new part. There should be something out there. Greg or Andrew may get a picture of it here and there. But yeah, I mean, it's, some players are playing it. We're lucky enough to hide it under other shaft colors. So it may look like this, but it's really that. But you always have to be testing and looking for the latest and greatest. And when you work with the best players in the world, like I said, we're always looking for a little bit more ball speed and a little bit more distance. I mean, we're almost at optimal, but we can find something through club and shaft design. Definitely.
Yeah. And then, I know we've talked a lot about shafts and stuff. I always have to ask when I have guests on, though. I mean, you're a Graphite Design guy. You have access to anything made. I got to ask you, one, what is in the driver? And two, I don't. Well, you're a golf industry guy, so your amount of golf you probably play is somewhat lowered over the years. But what are you playing in driver? And then two, if you had to go back and retro wise, what is your favorite old classic Graphite Design shaft? So two parts there.
Oh yeah, today it's VF. VF shaft. It's so good for me. I used to play UB. The blue and silver one. I love that shaft, the feel. I'm a feel guy. I need feel. And the VF feels great, very stable. If I had to go back, I mean, I know this sounds crazy. I'd probably have to go to a YS6 in the driver.
Yeah.
So old school, people may not know what that is. Very similar profile to a DI. But the YS line in driver through Fairywood was probably one of the most complete lines. I mean, it was the performance from driver to Fairywood was optimal. And that would be, those are my two. I'm very, like you said, I'm very lucky. I can tinker. I have a bag full of shafts if I ever get tired, or it's never the Indian. It's always the arrow. I just pull the arrow and put a new one in. And
of course, same with me.
Never the Indian. Never. So. But thank you to you. I think what you do is great. I love talking golf, and you do a great job. I mean, your passion for the game and educating the golfing world is fantastic. So great job to you and your team.
Well, I appreciate that. Now with that YS6, were there two graphics packages? Wasn't there like a lighter blue with like a silver band?
Yeah,
under the handle.
I think YS Plus. We tried to tried to reincarnate it, rejuvenate it, but the YS was, I mean,
it was kind of like the dark
905 head. The reason the YS was so good because it had a 4-inch parallel, and those bore heads at Titleist were very tricky to build, very stiff when you're putting that much shaft tip in a club head, and with that 4-inch parallel tip was something magical, and there were so many. That was probably the first iconic shaft that was everywhere. Everyone used it, and then we call it ups and downs. Then other manufacturers come along and take the flag and become the flag bearer for years. But the YS is what put us on the map.
I think if I had to go retro, because as I said, I'm a GC guy. I need a little bit more height than the VF offers. So and a little bit of spin kind of helps too. So GC for me in driver. But if I had to go retro, I think I want to say I'd probably be a Pershing guy.
Oh wow,
that was so. When I had that, I'm trying to remember what head it was in, but I still remember hitting that shaft so well, and I couldn't tell you what the profile really is anymore or anything like that. But then it had that little like diamond graphic that on the jet black shaft, and I had it. I want to say it had to be like an old like OG type Adams type head or something like that. I remember hitting it and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like That was right when I started to get kind of sucked into the whole aftermarket shaft thing and
Yeah.
seeing there was some cool things out there. Wasn't a lot back then, but that was, man, a
I
great
think
shaft.
I had a Pershing in an old Cobra head, but it was that carbon head that was super loud.
L4V.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I love that combination.
Cannon, though.
The sound after a while, like you would hit it
horrible.
and your threesome would be like looking back at you and start dealing with PTSD issues. But I mean, it's bad. But yeah, I remember the Pershing. We've made so many. I mean, you could say Purple Ice. I mean,
Purple Ice is cool.
we could go on and on here, but yeah, we're very lucky with R&D. We've created some amazing shafts. But Pershing is a good part. I forget that one.
I think maybe they need to do some retro alignment sticks with some old retro shafts like the YS6 and all that. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So little Pershing, little Purple Ice, little YS6. What was the one that was kind of teal blue with the black carbon above? It was
YSQ.
Q. Yeah. Had a cool look to it.
YSQ and YSQ ST, the stiff tip for more the PGA Tour guys. That dates me. That the YSQ ST was the first graphite design shaft I ever built for a tour player.
Wow.
Todd Dempsey, we're in Verona, California at Q School. I think I was shaking when I gave it to him because I didn't want the head to fly off, and I hope it was built right. But he was the kindest guy. But yeah, YSQ ST was the first graphite design tour shaft I ever built.
There we go. I think there we go for 25. We need to see retro alignment sticks. That'd be pretty cool. So, well, Erik, I appreciate the time, man. It's always awesome talking to you and getting to go down this shaft road because, like you, I mean, I'm a big shaft guy. I'm a shaft nut. Yeah. I love hitting everything. So, really appreciate the time. Thanks for giving us some knowledge, some insight on tours, some knowledge about the shafts. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you, Brian, for your time. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, man.